What makes you a tax resident?
Be very careful because you can become a Spanish tax resident and you're maybe not aware of it.
De facto.
Yeah. So, of course, if you stay longer than 183 days, you are considered a Spanish tax resident. If your main economic interests are here or if your family lives here. What is the big problem, in my personal opinion? The courts are overwhelmed with work.
Right.
So it just takes longer, but not because the system does not work, because they just have too much work.
Yeah.
But even for younger people now, if they want to move to Spain, they can do it via the digital nomad visa.
Yeah.
As long as they have an employer who doesn't care that they work remote control from Spain, it is not difficult to obtain such a visa.
Right. Today on Charlie in Sotogrande podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Joaquin Gonzalez, partner at Gonzalez and Sanchez and Partners, one of the leading law firms serving the Sotogrande area. Joaquin is both a lawyer and an economist, specializing in tax law, international taxation, and corporate and commercial law, and he regularly advises clients on complex cross-border matters. With an impressive academic background and experience working with international clients, Joaquin brings a deep understanding of the legal and fiscal landscape in Spain. Today we'll be talking about the legal side of property ownership, taxation, and doing business in Spain. Joaquin.
Hi, Charlie.
How are you? Yeah? Many people know you here in Sotogrande, Joaquin, but do they know your journey? Because are you German? Are you Spanish? Are you a bit of both? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I think I myself sometimes don't know if I'm German or Spanish.
A bit like me, I suppose.
I'm Spanish by nationality, and I was born in northern Spain in Galicia. But my parents moved to Germany when I was 7.
Okay.
And I grew up then in Germany.
Right.
They were the typical Spanish immigrants who in the beginning of the 70s have to leave Spain in order to make some money abroad.
Right.
So I went to school in Germany and I went to university in Germany.
Yeah.
And I think people don't know if I'm Spanish or German because even speaking English, I have a German accent.
That's right.
It's not a Spanish accent.
So you have a German accent when you speak English, which is quite funny. Do you think in German or do you think in Spanish?
In any of the languages, even in English.
Yeah.
That's for me all the same.
Okay. What brought you to law in the first place?
What brought me to law in the first? I actually always wanted to be a tax consultant or a lawyer. Always.
Right.
Since I was very young. I don't know why. Very strange. Other young people want to become a policeman or a fireman. I was very young, was reading the John Grisham books and wanted to be a lawyer.
Right. John Grisham. But you said either or, but you're both.
Yes. Yeah.
So why both?
Yeah, because I just thought, for my clients, it was a benefit. And my clients are normally foreigners coming to live or invest in a foreign country, and they need advice in both areas.
Yeah.
So I thought it will be an advantage, and it will help them much more.
Okay. So you qualified as both.
Yes.
Okay. And am I correct in saying you were a professor at university in Spain, in Madrid?
Yes.
You're teaching. So
yes, I have been.
You have been, yeah.
Yeah. At a master degree for tax law.
That's fun. So, you're half German, half Spanish, thinking both, are a lawyer and a professor or teaching at universities. That's amazing. This teaching, did that sort of help you a little bit in being a professional, imparting information, imparting knowledge to students? Do you think that's something, particularly advising private clients maybe?
Not specifically,
No?
to be very honest, but I enjoyed it very much because I have been always teaching even when I was at university. I was always giving private classes, and
Right.
it's just something I enjoy to transmit new things to younger people.
Okay.
And I just think it keeps yourself a little bit younger.
Yeah. Keeps you going all the time. What are the biggest misconceptions maybe that foreigners have about Spanish law? I get it all the time. Oh, in Spain it's like this. Oh, it's going like this. And all I have to say to them, look, in Spain, it's maybe different to the where you come from. That's all it is. It's different. You need to understand it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we cannot forget that the law is different in every country, and we might have a big difference, for example, with Anglo-Saxon law, where it's a case law.
Yeah.
which is not in Spain. We have the Roman law, so our law is more similar to the French or Italian. They will understand our system better than the Anglo-Saxon. But I, in general, would say Spain is a country where the law works well. You have legal security to always obtain what you need to obtain legally. What is the big problem, in my personal opinion? The courts are overwhelmed with work. Right. So it just takes longer, but not because the system does not work, because they just have too much work.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're overloaded, and that takes time, and then people think it's bureaucracy, and I suppose it is in a way, and it takes a while. And what would you say would be the biggest difference between, say, how Germans or Northern Europeans look at law and how down here versus the Spanish? I mean, for example, in Britain, when you buy a house, you don't go anywhere near a notary. You know, it's you have your solicitor, the other solicitor. You don't actually meet the other solicitor. You don't, they do everything, paperwork. It all seems to be done. They exchange, and then one day they say, "Oh, we've completed," and then they send you a check when you sold your house. And then it's very different.
Yeah, that's very different with the British or with the Americans or in general with the Anglo-Saxon. Not so different with the Germans, who also have to go to the notary if they want to buy a property, or the French. The system is a little bit different because the work the notary does is a little bit different than the work the notary does here. Yeah. In Spain, the lawyers are much more involved than they would be maybe in Germany, but there are quite some similarities. We don't have so many similarities with the British or Americans.
Okay, yeah. That's clear, and it's something that I have to explain all the time, because the process, so to speak, which is not complicated. It's just you need to understand it, and there you go. Okay, well, let's move on to your core audience interests. Okay, because that I think is very important. One of the reasons I think it's very important that you're here. Does buying a property in Spain give you residency? I know the answer is no. Why do people think that's the case?
Well, I think a lot of people might still think it because we had a program until last year, which was the Golden Visa.
Exactly.
Which gave you residency if you bought a property above 500,000 euros. This program has been cancelled. So nowadays, buying a property in Spain will not provide you with residency, at least not automatically.
Right. And therefore, what does? I mean, presumably there are certain visas that can give you the right to stay, the right to reside, maybe not the right to citizenship, but also be careful. If you do become a resident, you will have taxes to pay,
Yeah, I mean, in general, it is not so easy it's not difficult to become a resident of Spain. If you're not looking automatically to work in Spain.
Right.
So if you are retired, or if you earn your money outside Spain, but want to spend long periods in Spain and buy a property in Spain, there are visa options which are not difficult.
Like
the non-lucrative visa, in principle, is an easy visa if you have sufficient funds to maintain yourself, if you have a private health insurance, etc., and a clean criminal record certificate. There is no reason why it should not be granted. Yeah. But even for younger people now, if they want to move to Spain, they can do it via the digital nomad visa. Yeah. As long as they have an employer who doesn't care that they work remote control from Spain, it is not difficult to obtain such a visa.
Right. And is this such a thing as just a pure work visa? I mean, if someone's coming employed by a foreign company who has a place here, a sucursal, branch, and can they just get a work visa as such? Is it such a thing?
You can get a work visa, of course, and especially if you are employed by a company who has a branch here in Spain. You can also get a work visa if you want to come to Spain, if you have a job offer.
Okay.
Subject, of course, normally that this job offer cannot be filled with somebody already resident in Spain.
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously all EU citizens just have every right to come here.
That's clear. I mean, within the European Union, we all know we have the absolute freedom of movement.
Yeah, so that's not a problem. The Brexit issue, of course, caused a lot of hoo-ha with the Brits, most of them who want to come back anyway, and I've seen them coming back. The UK citizens post-Brexit, what are the practicalities for them in reality?
Yeah, of course, now they are non-EU citizens.
Yeah.
So, to be very honest, they're treated as if they would be Americans, Australians, or even South Africans.
Yeah.
They're just non-EU citizens. So, to come and go is in principle not a problem if they don't want to establish a residency in Spain, because as long as they stay 90 days within the last 180 days, they don't need a special visa and nothing. So who just wants a holiday home and can manage his days within this rule, he does not need to do anything at all.
Have you had people asking you about the treaty with Gibraltar now? How that's going to work? What's the flow of in and out? You might be a resident of Gibraltar, not necessarily Gibraltarian, but you have a home there. They will give you your red card, I think it is, in color. That allows you to come and go without any issues. But myself, for example, I mean, I'm a resident of Spain. I can walk into Gibraltar without taking any documentation. Is that right?
Yeah.
And walk back out again.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a Schengen area. As we know, within the other 28, I think we're 28 Schengen countries, we fly to Switzerland, we fly to France with no control. So there will be no border between Spain and Gibraltar, and therefore no restrictions and nothing.
What's your opinion about it all? How do you think it's going to work?
First of all, I think it's a good thing for this area.
For sure. I mean, they're more interested in the Spanish people. 15,000, they say, people go across. So that would be, relief.
And I also think economically. I mean, Gibraltar is a strong economy in this area. We'll have now a much bigger market and easier market. I think it will be profitable for the whole area. We, of course, now have to see how it's going to be implemented in practical. I mean, the agreement is almost 1,000 pages.
In English?
I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
And I suppose it might be difficult in the beginning because, a lot of things from the tax point of view are changing, from customs are changing, companies need to get used to it. But in the midterm, I think it will be for the benefit of the whole area.
I think, freedom of movement, it always does.
Yeah.
Always does.
Yeah.
It's clear that's the case. Just before we move on from visas, how long does a residency process take? Is that something that's done quick if you want to have a non-lucrative visa and get it done
A non-lucrative visa, the non-lucrative visa. The only thing is it starts in the embassy of your country of residence, in the Spanish embassy of your country in residence. This is a visa which you cannot apply directly in Spain.
Oh, okay.
So it's not once you receive the visa at the embassy, you can come to Spain and apply for the TIE card, for the residence card, and that's an easy process. The process for applying at the embassy, to be very honest, that will depend a little bit on the embassy. The London embassy is a little bit sometimes difficult to get even an appointment. The embassy in Munich is much quicker. Yeah. So it depends a little bit on of the embassy and the country in which you reside.
Okay, but normally 3 months. Is that that should be normal?
That should be more than sufficient normally.
Yeah. Okay. And I think you mentioned you have to have health insurance.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not a drain on the system here in Spain.
Yeah.
Okay, because I had Francis Payne who sells DKV insurances here, and he was saying how interesting it is to get the calls he gets, particularly from Americans wanting to come and and getting the right cover.
Yeah.
Some people just get the cheapest one just to get the visa.
The visa.
Others look at something else to get the real cover. But something to look at. Moving on to, say, tax residency, rather than just the people. There is that 183-day rule. There is the center of economic interest. That's important. There is the family residency factor. There's a family here altogether. And obviously, you've got to worry about your worldwide income if you become a resident here and how you... Yeah. What actually makes someone a tax resident in Spain? What makes you a tax resident?
The easiest 3 points are the one which you have just mentioned, but you have to be very careful because you can become a Spanish tax resident and you're maybe not aware of it.
De facto.
Yeah. So, of course, if you stay longer than 183 days, you are considered a Spanish tax resident. If your main economic interests are here or if your family lives here. But for example, if your family lives here and you are still resident in another high tax country or country with which we have a double tax treaty, and you can provide a tax resident certificate, it doesn't matter that your family lives here. This breaks that rule.
Okay.
So the 183 days is also a complicated issue because the 183 days, you might not spend 183 days in Spain, but imagine you spend 160 days in Spain, in another country only 120, and the rest traveling worldwide. If Spain is the country in which you have spent most of the days in a year, even without being 183 days, the tax office might knock on your door and consider that Spain is your country of residence.
The majority of the year you were here.
Yeah, so these 3 points, we have to consider them very careful.
Okay.
And then a big problem is, of course, that you might have spent 250 days in Spain, and Spain considers you a tax resident. But then Germany might consider you also a tax resident because your economic interest is in Germany.
Right.
All your income is in Germany. So in that cases, actually, we have to go to the double tax treaty, which has specific rules. Which country will have the right to tax you on your worldwide income and consider you a tax resident if both countries, under their internal law, consider you a tax resident.
Right. So, and they work it out.
Yeah.
They work it out. So, if I become tax resident, what changes immediately for me? I mean, I am tax resident. I've been for many years.
Yeah.
But if I'm not, if I was coming in and I became tax resident, what changes? I get a NIE. That's my tax number.
Yeah. Well, the tax number you also have as a non-tax resident.
Yeah.
So imagine you were a non-tax resident with a property, and now you become a tax resident. Yeah. In principle, you will register with the tax office as a tax resident, and then, of course, as soon as you have done this, your obligations start.
Right.
That's the big point. You, from now on, will have a lot of tax obligations.
Yeah.
Will normally are filing and presenting a lot of tax returns.
Right.
Spain is a country which has worldwide income tax ruling. And we also have a tax on our wealth, which many countries don't have. So that might be a big difference when you become a Spanish tax resident, that everybody almost knows income tax because almost every country has income tax. But not every country has a tax on the wealth. Spain has one.
Okay. So become resident, it's income tax, obviously, dividends.
On any sort of income.
Anything property you have abroad, everything comes in.
Nevertheless, on the income you have abroad, we can't forget that we have to look at the double tax treaty with that country.
Yeah.
Especially, for example, if we have properties abroad, all double tax treaties say that the country in which the property is located has the first taxing right. Okay. So if a British comes to live in Spain and still maintains a property in the UK which he is renting out, he will still have to pay the tax on their rental income in the UK. Right.
The Beckham Law, does that still work? Who qualifies? How do you get into a Beckham Law?
The Beckham Law actually, I would say, has become even more popular because the concept of the Beckham Law has been made much more wider. It introduces now also the possibility for remote control workers who don't have a Spanish employer, who are working for a foreign company, to come under the Beckham Law.
So previously you had to be employed by a Spanish company.
You had to be employed by a Spanish company.
And your taxation was limited to what you earned in Spain.
Yeah. You had to be employed by a Spanish company or be the director of a Spanish company, but it had to be a trading company, not a pure property holding company. Okay. You can still qualify for Beckham by coming under employment for a Spanish company, being the director of a Spanish company, for a trading Spanish company, but now also if you are a remote control worker for a foreign employer.
When does it make sense and doesn't make sense to do it? I mean, why go the Beckham way and not any other way?
The Beckham law is a beneficiary tax regime for people because you come and become a resident of Spain, but tax-wise you will be treated as a non-tax resident because only your employment income is going to be taxed at a flat tax rate of 24,
right,
which is half of what it is normally in the highest tax rate, and any income outside Spain or assets doesn't fall under Spanish taxation. So it's a privileged tax regime.
Why don't more people do it? I mean, it's obviously, you say it's becoming more popular.
We actually are dealing with much more applications than before.
Yeah.
But of course, at least you need to have either an employment in Spain or be the director of a trading company, or have a remote control work contract with a foreign employer. So not everybody might be able to qualify for these.
Exactly.
And in principle, you need to have a university qualification degree because it's considered for high professionals.
Right. Okay, so those are for residents. Non-residents now. People that are non-resident, okay, but may have a holiday home here and that sort of thing. There is a non-resident income tax, IRNR, okay. There's an imputed income tax, I think, as well. Wealth tax exposure, you could be if you're a non-resident. And capital gains on your sale, presumably. Yeah. If I only own a villa, but live most of my time outside, what are my obligations from a tax point of view?
If you don't rent out the property, you have just the obligation to file this imputed income tax.
Right.
It's a low tax. It's not a big tax. And it's we can't forget that even every Spaniard having a second property has to pay this imputed income tax. So it's not for foreigners.
What's not a big tax? How does it work out?
Because it's 1.1% of the cadastre value, which is much lower normally than the market value, and of that 19%.
So if your property is worth 200,000, it would be 1.1% of 200,000.
And of that 19%.
No, that 19%. Okay, so get that.
So
very small.
It's not a big tax, and it's not a tax for foreigners, although it's called non-resident tax, because also Spaniards or Spanish residents pay it on their second home because it's considered for holiday homes, which you have at your disposal. And a foreigner not being a resident, even if it's only his own home, it's considered a holiday home.
Because he must have another home.
Yeah.
That's why he's non-resident or resident. Yeah. How is it calculated? The non-resident tax. The income, sorry. The income. If you rent a house.
If you rent out, we have to make a difference between EU citizens and non-EU citizens. Okay. Non-EU citizens, unfortunately, pay 24% income tax rate and are not allowed to deduct any cost.
Right.
This, of course, is more harmful than for the EU residents because not only that they have a reduced tax rate of 19%, sometimes it's even much more important that they're allowed to deduct all the costs, which could be agency fees, cleaning fees, depreciation of the property, repairs, maintenance, and the non-EU citizens cannot deduct all of these costs.
What's the logic of that? I mean, most people, I would suspect, are EU citizens who have a second home here. Yeah. Maybe the British, of course, changed that dramatically because they were one of the ones that had most. Was it sort of, and is it a national thing or is it a regional?
A national thing. The non-resident taxes are national laws.
Okay, so they're from Madrid rather than from your own state.
I can't see any logic behind it, to be very honest.
It's almost as if we're going to tax foreigners that are not from the EU because. I mean, it's weird. And you need to file annually, presumably.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you file the whatever the number is, the more they know, and you're done.
With the rental income, until last year, you had to file a quarterly return. That luckily now is different. And in January, you file an annual return for the rental income for the previous year. Yeah. So at least from the administrative work, it has become much easier.
So if I have a house but I don't rent it out, how is that worked out? Is it worked out? I believe. Based on the rental possibility or
on the cadastral value?
The cadastral value.
Yeah. 1.1%, and
Okay.
of that figure, 19% will be the tax due. And if you rent out the property partly and partly use it yourself, then it's a pro rata calculation.
Okay. So it works in a sort of fair way. What happens if you don't pay?
Well, what happens if you don't pay? I suppose same as in
in the
most
world.
of the countries, the tax bill is going to get higher with fines and late payment interest. And
Spain is pretty strong on enforcement of that because they can get into your bank account, you know.
Yeah, and actually I know from some seminars that tax inspectors of other countries say they would like to have the Spanish
system,
because they say the amount of information the Spanish tax office has from the taxpayer is much higher than in many other countries, so they will get you here. If one thing works well in Spain, it's the Spanish tax office going after you. So just make sure that you file everything properly.
They also are incentivized. Is that true? I mean,
I think also in other countries, yes. I mean, they are incentivized in order to, of course, make their job good, which means find people who are not paying correctly their taxes.
Yeah, but the fact is, as I believe, it may be wrong, but they get a percentage of what they get back, what they claim.
A percentage, not that I'm... No, they get bonuses, but not as a percentage as far as I know.
Okay. What about inheritance tax? I mean, that's important as well, because if you have a property and you pass, you know, how does that work? Inheritance tax.
Inheritance tax now, at least in the area where we are, Charlie, we are in a very lucky position.
Yeah.
The inheritance tax is a regional tax. So in the region of Andalusia since 2019 has more or less in principle abolished the inheritance tax in direct line, which means between spouses or children or grandchildren. Up to $1 million per year is 100% exempted, but even above $1 million, it's 99% exempted.
Right.
So we are in a very, very, very lucky position, because also inheritance tax normally a part of 3 or 4 double tax treaties never forms part of the double tax treaties.
Okay.
So before we had this exemption, you ended up paying inheritance tax in Spain and the UK, for example, or in Spain and Germany. And that was very harmful. Because it just does not form part of 99% of the double tax treaties.
Right. So a foreign will, a Spanish will is very important, and to separate them.
A Spanish will, from the tax point of view, it doesn't matter if you have a Spanish will or not.
Okay.
Because the inheritance tax laws are applied to if you have a Spanish will or if you have done your will abroad. So you are British with a property here, and in your British will you have established that this house shall go to whatever the heir is. The tax which will apply is the same as if you would have done a Spanish will.
Okay.
But a Spanish will facilitates, of course, in case of the inheritance, the legal work.
Right. Okay, that's clear. Let's move on to what I do every day is trying to sell property, buying property in safely. Bring it back to my world, I suppose. What legal checks must be done before signing a private contract? Because, I've had many different lawyers saying we do this contrato de arras and we can sign it very quickly. But I, for example, always ask my clients to make sure they have sent a surveyor in and that your lawyer has actually done the legal due diligence before you sign the contract. There's no point in putting 5,000 euros down as a reservation on a house of 3 million because it's not real impact to take it off the market for 2 weeks for this to be done, blah, 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 blah. So, when you get a brief from a client saying, look, I want to buy this property, what are the sort of top legal checks that you do?
Yeah, I suppose we have to make a small difference depending on the sort of property you're buying. If it's a plot versus a villa versus a property maybe under construction from a developer versus an apartment. But there are some points which are, of course, obligatory in any of the properties transactions. The first of all, make sure that the vendor has a clean legal title. I think that's the basic. If you want to buy a plot, of course, make sure that the construction you want to do is eligible to get a building license there.
Yeah.
Because if you buy, for example, now that we're here in Sotogrande, a plot in La Reserva, and you want to build a 4-story villa in La Reserva, it's just not possible. So you should make sure that what you want to build is eligible to get a building license.
Yeah.
In any sort of transaction, you will, of course, also have to make sure that there are no debts, or encumbrances, or charges. And if there are, you will have to make sure that all of them are cancelled the day you get your title deed.
Yeah.
If you buy a villa, of course, make sure that the construction is legal, has all the licenses, the first occupancy license. And if it's a second hand purchase, send a surveyor in to be sure that there are no big construction issues.
Yeah, which is something that the British are very much on top of, but other nationalities don't.
Not so much, it's very strange, but it's normally the British who, the first thing they ask, do you know a surveyor? I have to send a surveyor there.
Yeah. Because that's very common in Britain. You don't buy a house without us sending a surveyor. It's part of this thing, which is interesting. Buying through a company or yourself, at what point does it make it worthwhile? Because if you have a company that owns the property that you want to buy, you have all sorts of administration charges, ongoing tax returns, all this sort of stuff that becomes, if you're buying it's a number, €1 million house, which is your holiday home, maybe doesn't make sense. But if you have a bigger one, what are the main reasons people want to buy through a company? Other maybe it's a business rather than a pleasure property.
Yeah, this is really a very complex question. Very, very, very complex question. Because first of all, in principle, there would be no reason to buy a property via a company if it would not be maybe for some tax advantages.
Right.
But again, here, we have to make big differences. If I would be a UK citizen, British, and want to buy a property which I want to rent out, mainly, of course, I would consider doing it with the Spanish company, because at least the company will be able to offset all the costs from the rental income, which I, as British, cannot do. If I buy a 3 million villa, which I'm going to rent out, at least during long periods, it makes sense to do it through a company so that I can offset all the costs. And the corporate tax rate is 25%, the non-resident tax 24%, but this 1% is the benefit of offsetting all the costs is much higher.
Better. Yeah, of course.
Therefore, for example, for non-EU citizens who want to use the property not only themselves but also renting out, they might consider the option of the company.
Right.
In which other cases a company could make sense? A company could also make sense maybe if it's if you would fall under the wealth tax. By owning the asset directly. But here we have to be very careful, because Spain has already changed several double tax treaties, which now allow Spain to also charge the wealth tax on the holding of Spanish shares if that company holds more than 50% Spanish properties.
Okay.
So actually, we have to look at the treaties to see if by having a company,
sense,
it makes sense or not, because with Switzerland it still makes sense because the treaty has not changed, but with Germany or the UK not. There's specifically a clause in which says that the wealth tax is still applicable.
Right.
And we also have to keep in mind that if you own a property via a company and you don't rent it out, for just having it at your disposal, you have to pay a market value rent.
Okay.
So a shareholder or director of the company cannot just use the property as he wishes for nothing. And this is an issue where the Spanish tax office really looks after it and follows it. So it's really a calculation, and each case needs to be looked at it individually. It's impossible to give a clear answer which would work for everybody.
No, and I know about that last bit, because I've been asked by owners of properties to value their property in terms of the rental, so that they can say that that's a market value. It's not the double which you're trying to charge me or whatever, but it's something that happens. Just moving on, the tourist rental licenses in Andalusia, that's sort of like it's sort of changed the landscape a little bit, because people would have a property and rent it out, and that now this rental licenses came in. There's a lot more control, which I think is a good thing, because you expect to have the air conditioning working and everything in order when you go in, and there's an element of that. How is that moving? I mean, is that work, do you think, in your experience? And I know it's changed a lot in the big cities, maybe, but here in Sotogrande, it's sort of,
Well, here in Sotogrande, I don't think it had so much impact.
Exactly.
Because it's anyway an area, I think, that everybody accepts that we have a touristic rental of properties. These are holiday apartments or properties. So I don't think it has such a big impact in the area where we are. But of course, it had a big impact in many other areas.
Where people had...
In Malaga, for example, in the city center, they don't give any rental license anymore. I think in Manilva also, they don't give any. So there are some areas, I suppose, where this has restricted a lot the possibility of the holiday rentals.
And the reason being is that it, in a way, is raising prices, because people with money can come in, can buy these properties, the prices go up, and then the local people really have no access to reasonably priced properties.
And not even to come in and buy the properties, even for a lot of Spaniards owning a second or third property, a lot of them have dedicated their properties to holiday rentals, because due to the increase in the rentals, they've earned much more than with a long-term rental. And this, of course, has made it in Spain much more difficult in a lot of cities for people to rent a permanent home.
In communities where you have like an urbanization and lots of apartments, do the community have the right to stop rentals? Or is it just something that you have to accept if you go into buy a place in a community?
No, the rental license needs the 3/5 majority of the owners.
Right.
So of course,
so the owners decide, but 3/5 of them have to
3/5 of the voting rights
have to stop it.
Or allow it.
Or allow it.
If there wasn't any decision.
Right. Okay. Very good. So, just moving on. When you have you're foreigner, you come to live here, your driving license, do you have to change it or not?
If you're a resident. If you're a resident, yes, you have to change it.
And
it's obligatory. It's easy for the EU driving licenses, because it's just an administrative change. I'm not so sure. Everybody has to change it. I'm not so 100% sure about the administrative issue if it's a driving license maybe from Latin America or non-EU.
And is that you have to change it when you become a resident, or not whilst you're going through the process? So you have time.
I actually think, I'm not an expert on that, but I think you have up to 6 months or something like that time to.
And UK licenses are the same. It's the same. Healthcare. We talked about healthcare. If you were you're coming in, you as a non-person. What about once you are a resident? You have access to the equivalent of the national health, the Seguridad Social. You automatically get your card, your health card, and
it depends, Charlie. If you come, for example, as a pensioner from a country in which you had the right to the national health, European Union and also including UK, then your right of national health care is transferred to Spain. So you will have the right to the national health care in Spain.
You just integrate it into the system.
Yes, it's a form called S1, which you apply in your home country. And you bring it here to the Social Security, and you immediately get full access, as if you would have always been in Spain to the national health insurance. You, of course, also get access to the national health insurance if you set up a business and register as a self-employed, as an autonomo. or if you are spouse, child of somebody resident in Spain who has the right to national health.
Okay.
Otherwise, if not, you of course will have to make sure that you have private health insured.
Yeah. Why is the NIE so important? The NIE.
The NIE, I would say, is important because it's a tax identification number, although it's issued by the police, which is a little bit strange because in principle it's a...
And it doesn't mean the N is a número, the I is identificación,
Yeah.
and E is extranjero.
Yeah.
Doesn't mention tax in there.
Yeah, but it's your tax number.
But it's everything. It's my driving license number. In my case.
In your case?
Yeah, they use that for that.
Yeah.
It's my health card number.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a number that's used for everything.
Yeah.
I think it's so practical and so useful. Really.
I think it's a little bit like the Social Security number in the US. I think they only have for everything also these this one number.
Yeah. I think if I ever had a tattoo, I'd put that on it. So then if I forget it, it's a good thing. Another one that people ask me all the time is, what is the empadronamiento? Because such a thing doesn't really exist in other countries that I've lived as such. I mean, I'm sure it was disguised as something different. What does that mean, and what is that?
It's a registration at the town hall. In principle, this only applies if you become a resident. If you become a resident, you have to register with your town hall.
Okay.
If you're a foreigner, when you register with the town hall, and if you're from the European Union, for example, you will be able to vote at the municipal elections.
But not on the
national. No, not on the national. That's only
for citizens.
Yeah. So it is important in principle to register at the town hall if you are a resident, because the town halls get their financing from the central government depending on the number of inhabitants. And of course, they provide a lot of public services, the town halls. And residing in a town and not registering at the town hall might be an issue for the town hall. Right.
I mean, it's interesting that during the drought that we had a couple of summers ago, when the town was being aggressive against Sotogrande because we were wasting money, water, and watering our gardens and washing our cars and everything else, they were using a number of residents as those which are empadronados. And I think it was a silly number, like 2,500. So the division, when you divide it by the number per capita, became huge. You know, when the reality is that there are people here who are resident, or people who are non-resident Spanish but have a home here, who were here, and that were using up water as well. So the actual use was very different. But anyway, that's interesting. And also, you have to have multiple registrations here in Spain for lots of things, isn't it? I mean, it's
what do you mean?
Well, you have an empadronamiento, you have the NIE, you have the the health one, you have the it's a lot of, this is what people call bureaucracy, I think. You know, that you have to, and then again, it's not maybe right, but your driving license in the UK and in France is until you're 70. Here you have to renew it. You know, your ID card has to be renewed. Your TIA number that I have has to be renewed. You know, it's I understand putting a new photograph on, because if you get it when you're 25, when you're 65, you might look a little bit different. But anyway, that's life. Okay. Just one other thing, I think, before we get into other stuff: strategic planning for a high net worth individual. Okay, so someone coming in, when should they start speaking to a lawyer? Before or after buying?
Before,
obviously.
Definitely.
So because that would give you something.
Yeah.
Should people plan relocation before, or physically move and then before? What are the biggest tax planning opportunities available in Spain, if there are any?
It's difficult again to answer this question in general, because it will depend on each situation. You will have to look at, for example, setting up a family business. If we are looking at wealth tax issues, but maybe if you are coming to Spain, you are able to structure your income in a certain way so that it doesn't fall into the general income tax rate, but into the financial tax rate, capital gains tax rate. but it's too wide in this area to give a general advice.
Okay. That's been fantastic, Joaquin. Thank you so much for your time. I think it's been very useful. And let's see if I learned anything. All right.
Okay.
So before you move,
Yes.
all right, secure a visa.
Yes.
Yeah. Before you move, get private health insurance.
Yes.
Before you move, understand the tax and residency triggers, what makes you happen. And before you move, speak to a tax advisor before coming here. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Before buying, yeah? Full legal and due diligence.
Absolutely.
Clarify tax implications, understand inheritance exposure, and review wealth tax position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And after moving, register residency property, you're registered. Exchange driving licenses, because after 6 months you might be driving without a license. Register for healthcare, because you are a resident moving. And you must look after your annual compliance from a tax perspective. Okay? Excellent. Joaquin, if someone is listening today and thinking of moving to Sotogrande within the next 12 months, what are the 3 things they must absolutely not get wrong?
Oi. Just 3 things.
Only 3 things.
Only 3 things. Okay.
The ones that will, make you go to jail, probably.
Yeah. Well, I think they should, if they look for a property, first they should look for a good agent.
Yeah.
Well established and who knows what he does, because the property investment is the biggest investment normally when you come and live here. They should look for a good lawyer to guide them through the whole process, because it's just a different country and you need guidance. And third of all, to have enough, a big suitcase with swimming clothes, because we have wonderful weather here.
Yes.
And they should come prepared to Sotogrande.
So a lot of sunscreen and a suit and come and enjoy
And they
yourself.
should be prepared to enjoy a new life.
Absolutely. Joaquin, thank you so much indeed.
Big pleasure, Charlie.
There you go, everybody. Joaquin Gonzalez of Gonzalez, Sanchez and Partners. If you want to find out more about his bufete de abogados, as they say here, the office, it'll be all in the details below. See you next time.